living in the world in which we live, I think many of us are hungry for the resurrection. I think many of us walk through life feeling hungry for the resurrection. There's so much that weighs upon us. And Palm Sunday is an unusual celebration within the church, because we start with the triumphant entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem, and then we finish the readings with the Passion and the crucifixion. And the truth is, there was a lot of other stuff that happened in between those two events, right? That are put into a single Sunday of lectionary readings. And I found myself, when I was thinking about this over the week, there were two things that came to mind. The first is the whole idea of Jesus riding into Jerusalem on a donkey and the crowds are cheering is so not like Jesus. Jesus was so humble. Jesus, the man who would heal people and say, don't tell anybody that this happened. And of course, they would go off and share with all their friends and family. The woman at the well immediately ran off preaching to her village, and the lepers who had been healed ran off preaching to their friends. And Jesus was quieter than that. But here we have this moment where he says, please go to our friends in the city and tell them we'll be having dinner with them, and then bring a donkey and I'm going to ride. And the crowds are cheering and they're waving their palms, and so not like Jesus. And I found myself wondering, the second thing that was on my mind, what was this like for him? So we have these readings from the perspective of an observer. We're watching the crowd. We're watching him on the donkey. We're watching the disciples get dinner ready. We're watching what happens in the praetorium. We're watching what's happening to him. What was he watching and seeing? And when I ask myself this question, it actually helps me to understand a little bit better why he would have been okay with traveling into Jerusalem on a donkey with lots of cheering and celebrating. And I imagine as he's moving into the city, he's gazing the crowd, and he sees the woman with the hemorrhage, and she's looking at him and waving and praising his name. And he sees that leper, the one leper who came back to thank him, and he's saying, Lord, you healed me. And he sees the people in the crowd talking to one another saying, he healed my sister. Did you see what he did on the hill? He fed all of us with loaves and fishes. He taught us about love and forgiveness. And they're all talking to each other, And then we move into Holy Thursday, this feast of Passover. You know, the scriptures tell us it was Jesus and the 12 men, and that's a bunch of... We know that this was a big family celebration. There were women there, there were children there. This is an important moment in the life of the Jewish tradition every year. So Jesus is breaking bread with his family and friends all together and looking out at them and seeing the way that they are learning to love one another. Then he's got the cross on his back and he's carrying it. And Veronica comes up and wipes his face, and he's gazing out at this woman, soaking him in her love. So when I think about the events of Holy Week that span so much further than the readings that we have today, I think, okay, Jesus is looking into the crowd. He's looking back at us as we are watching and looking upon him, everything that's happening. So what does that mean for us? Well, if the woman with the hemorrhage is in the crowd, it means maybe I'm invited to think about, who is it who's in my circle, who's just waiting to touch the fringe, right? She reached up, she knew if she just touched the fringe on his cloak that she would be healed. Who am I meant to see in that light? If it's my friends and family around a table, for whom am I meant to pass the bread, pass the cup, to share the joy of loving one another? If it's someone in a moment of grace who wants to wipe my face when life is really, really hard, Can I receive that love the way that Jesus received that love? Letting Veronica be mother to him in that moment in a way that only mothers know how. There's so much packed into Palm Sunday. And it all comes back to that final moment on the cross, Jesus hanging in agony, and his last words were words of love. And he says to the two thieves hanging next to him, "You will be with me this day in heaven." So as he gazes out upon us, I think it's an interesting exercise for us to think about. Who are we gazing upon? Who wants to be healed? Who wants to share the bread? Who wants to love us? And can we walk the path that Jesus walked and let ourselves be for others the way he was for us?